Well, seem to have a slight issue with our timer there, but it does look as though we are live. So I am delighted to welcome everybody who's watching live or on catch up. I'm delighted to welcome our panel for the evening. And this one's dropped off the screen. All right. Welcome our panel for the evening. On Tuesday night, we had Laura, better half, Labour Party people, and the big topic that they were talking about there was about people staying in the party and fighting. Tonight, by contrast, we have a panel of people who are about being out fighting for the left and fighting. So just going in no particular order, well, clockwise round, more or less, we have Thelma Walker from former Labour MP, who is part of the National Independence, Northern Independence Party, excuse me. I will just say as well in my intro to the my promo for the show earlier on, I called them the People's Assembly for of the Left, and it's the People's Alliance of the Left. So my bad on that one. Right. We have Doug Thorpe from Left Unity, Alex Mace from the Breakthrough Party, Philip from the Northern Independence Party as well, Philip Proudfoot, and Socialist Telly's Damien Wiley, and of course I'm Steve from Squawk Books. So I am going to hand this over to the panel as quickly as possible to, I think, Thelma, you're going to lead off, are you, about what is PALA about, what's it trying to achieve, and, why should people be interested?
Yeah, well, thanks, Steve, and it's great to be with you again. I think it's my third time on Socialist Telly, and I've enjoyed it every time. So, yeah, an exciting week for us this past week with the launch of our People's Alliance of the Left. And so I want to give a bit of background, really, to how it started, and then hand over to the leaders of the political parties in our alliance. So, as you know, I left the Labour Party some time ago now, and I think, like the rest of us that decided to leave, there was this political vacuum, and it almost in the wilderness, really. And like many people, I was on social media and getting more angry and frustrated about the lack, I suppose, of organisation on the left, of, well, what we're going to do. And I was one of those people that was mainly on social media, but then it got to me that I thought, well, what are we going to do? Because historically, the left have been so splintered, and it's been so difficult bringing the left together. But I thought to myself, well, I had an interview, first of all, I think, with you, Alex, which I really enjoyed, and we really bonded, I suppose, in terms of our politics and that shared policy platform. And then the Hartlepool by-election came up, and I got to know Philip as well. And then Philip and Alex got to know each other, and we started having conversations. And it came to me, I thought, this is the way, that we've got these new and emerging socialist political parties and campaign groups and grassroots campaigns going on. It's bringing people together, and how we do that and how we organise. And it's that saying, isn't it? Don't mourn, organise. So I'd come through that period of mourning. And so I started to organise just very informal discussion groups on Zoom, and invited a variety of people. Because what the Alliance is, it's made up of, yes, of course, these political parties, but campaigners as well. And it's an umbrella organisation, because what PAL isn't a political party. It's an organisation which brings like-minded socialists together to share information about campaigning, to look at shared, as I've mentioned, policy platform. And we've been meeting really for nearly a year. And there's the wider PAL, which is made up of these campaign groups and some union representation as well. But then, of course, what has come together is this, the political parties, and a working group which is separate from the wider PAL has worked on this memorandum of understanding, which is really the building blocks of how we can move forward and what we can agree on. and we won't agree on everything. And each of the political parties in particular have distinctive aims and objectives. But the shared aim for our alliance is to one day deliver the socialist government, the government that we missed in 17 just by just a narrow margin. But those policies have been built on, it's those transformational policies that all of us believe in. And as I say, we don't agree on everything, and we do have some different objectives. But to get together, when we're in discussion, you can see it's heartwarming to see how people engage with each other in a really positive way. And I think the response to the launch of the Alliance this week speaks for itself. That as I say, there's been this political vacuum, and I think many socialists have been waiting for somewhere to go. And with there being the different political parties, they have got an opportunity within the Alliance to approach each of the political parties, to find out more, to join if they want to. But for those who really don't want to engage with a specific political party, we're part of a movement, and I think that's the important thing. And it's that shared goal of wanting to achieve that socialist government that is really, really important. So I think you can ask. I can take questions later about specifics to do with the alliance, but I think it's important that the leaders of the individual parties have a chance to talk now.
So on that note, who would like to come in first?
Don't all race at once.
Age before beauty, maybe. I'll come in on this. Not just myself, but organisationally. Left Unity's actually been around for a fair while. We're not one of the newer groups, but we've been around since sort of 2013, the sort of Podemos moment and the movements in the squares and so on. But the key is in the name, and we've always been about trying to unify that anti-austerity, as it was then, movement, the left. Both, I mean, we're open to people in the Labour Party, but the Labour Party isn't open to people outside, I think, is the main thing. But yes, and we've always incorporated people from a number of streams. Our original membership had ex-Greens, ex-Trotskyists, ex-Labour Party members, people who'd never been anything before. A lot of our members then, understandably, the whole of the left really regrouped around Jeremy's leadership, and we gave up standing in elections. We never stood against Jeremy while he was leader. But with the ending of that, a new period, I think, has opened up, and we see that there's this hunger outside, not just the hundreds maybe of thousands that have left the Labour Party, but all those people who would have been attracted to Jeremy's leadership, who are looking for somewhere to go. And a lot of them have gone into the Black Lives Matter movements, the Bill campaigns and so on. So there are all these things churning around, and this, I think, is a step forward. I always think we're used to recognising doors slamming in our faces, but the key is sometimes to recognise when a door is slightly ajar or is beginning to open, and to take advantage of that. And I think that's where we are now. There is an opening, and we really need to work together. We've got more in common. It's always very easy on the left to find what differentiates you from someone else. Actually, we share so much more, and that really is our focus. One day we may all have to have a discussion on the exact nature of the Chinese state, but actually for the moment, getting rid of Boris Johnson is more important. I don't know, I'm opening up for someone else now. I think.
Philip, you go next. Yeah. Just everybody jump in. Don't be polite. We're just it's as if we're all sitting around a pub table having a debate.
Well, obviously, we in the Northern Independence Party fully welcome the emergence of PAL, and we're really proud to have been part of those discussions. And we absolutely think it's a step in the right direction. We all share broad socialist values within all three parties. So we do have a shared platform, and there is a lot that unites us. But keeping the separate identities also allows us, as Selma said, to focus in on the specific issues, and then it gives broader choice to people as to which political party they want to join. We have real we have a shared values, but we also have distinct points of focus. So people have a real electoral choice. And that's why, in my view as well, the need for PAL, when we look at the mainstream parties that, what they think of as a progressive alliance between the Liberal Democrats and Keir Starmer's Labour Party, actually just takes away voters' choices because it amalgamizes the same policy platform. Whereas we, I always stress, when I say I'm a democratic socialist, I do that not because I'm trying to soften up the word socialism, but also because I think in the UK, we really do actually need to have a serious conversation about how democracy is functioning on this island. So, for us, one of the focuses is on breaking this over-centralization in London and increasing power within communities and towns. So I always say, we're democratic socialists for that reason. And if we look at the collapsing of choices within the mainstream political parties in under an electoral system that's not fit for purpose, we see that focus on democracy now is also essential if we want to realize those socialist objectives at the same time. So that's why we're proud to be part of PAL, because we feel it is moving in that right direction where we need radical change, and it's time we spoke and worked together.
Over to you, Alex.
I'll come in now. So obviously we only celebrated our first birthday yesterday, so we're one of those newer parties that have sort of come in off the back of, I guess, there's been this real as everyone sort of talked about before, this sort of downward spiral that Labour are in, and their abandoning of left politics, and there's been a real opportunity for new parties to come into play, new movements, new campaign groups. And we've sort of been one of those that have come in as part of that wave. When we talk about this alliance and just a general left alliance, this is something that we've been really pushing for since day one, really. We know that as we're developing and growing as one entity, we're not strong enough to, on our own at the moment, to make a massive difference. But coming together with other like-minded groups, and it doesn't have to just be political parties here, as Phil Random, I think everyone actually in here has mentioned, working with other political parties, unions, campaign groups, coming together as one, we've got a much bigger chance of disrupting the status quo, which is the main objective really here. Is obviously we want to see a socialist government, and we're willing to do whatever it takes in terms of working together to achieve that aim. When we've spoken about it in the party, it's something that our members are really passionate about, and it's something that they're really excited about. And I think there is a general excitement about this alliance, and understandably so, because as Felma said before, the left has been fractured for years, and there's finally some progress in bringing everyone together. I think, as Phil said as well, we all still are keeping our identities, right? Obviously, I think Doug touched on before about this, the younger generation who obviously have abandoned the Labour Party of 2015, 2016 to 2019 and sort of put their energy into Black Lives Matter movement, Sisters Uncut, Extinction Rebellion and other groups, because they don't feel like there's a political vehicle for that. And that's where we came in as a specific, a youth-led party. And every party within this coalition have their own identity. And that's the great thing about this coalition, is that we're not surrendering identities, but what we're coming together for is this real sense of purpose, which is ultimately securing a socialist government and bringing the left closer together. And I think so far that's obviously been really, really promising. And I think there's lots of potential for it to grow, take on more groups, and see where it can go. So yeah, it's a really exciting time and a really exciting development.
Good. I'm going to hand up a demo in a second, but Philip, you mentioned being a democratic socialist, and I'd venture to suggest that at the moment being a democratic anything is a revolutionary act in this country. And Kay Smith here seems to agrees. She said we don't have a functioning democracy on this island. The illusion's been shattered. You have a chance of restoring some faith in uniting the left in the UK. People actually give a what about people. So.
I mean, obviously, I agree with that entirely, and I think that one of the problems with those kinds of questions, constitutional reform, new electoral systems, devolution, they're typically seen as quite to be frank, unsexy topics. and they were sort of left aside for such a long time, and they were not directly even tackled under the Corbyn period, right? We presumed we were going to win power within the current frameworks of the United Kingdom, but I think now when we see the fact that so many of our rights can just be stripped away through parliamentary decree, that we don't have the protections of a written constitution, that political power is so centralized in London that it can overrule, it can apply different relief packages to Manchester versus the South. Like, we properly see now that there is this space and need for us to take those questions that I think have, traditionally sort of been the territory of people like the Liberal Democrats. But I think it's really time now for the left to look seriously at how our democracy actually functions.
Demo, you've been following all this stuff quite closely for a while, so what do you make of what you've heard so far?
It's really exciting stuff, isn't it? It's solidarity and collectivism amongst socialist parties, and they're coming together to find a way forward. And when it's been a really low ebb for the left for so long. It's feel like forever now that we've been enduring this farce of an alleged left party of Labour led by Keir Starmer at the moment, and it's become ever more so, and it's becoming more and more obvious that it no longer is, especially in light of the departures from the NEC that we've seen from Laura Pidcock this week, and of the announcement today of Nadia Jama not planning to stand at the next set of NEC elections. I wanted to come back to actually Philip's mention of a constitution. Lead me on nicely to the first thing I wanted to ask, actually, is because obviously you said you've had these conversations now going on the last sort of year, where you've clearly found enough common ground to decide that yes, an alliance between these parties can work. We can take it forward as a political entity whilst still maintaining our own individual identities. What sort of policy grounds have you found as the common ground between the parties, and is a written constitution for PAL something that is realistically something that we're going to be seeing, something that's going to be put together that you all agree to abide by and that all your parties will stand for?
What am I right to come in on that?
Anybody can jump in.
We've we're very much at the early stages at the moment, but the memorandum of understanding is that starting point, really, of those broad brushstrokes, if you like, about these are the building blocks, these are the not for sale beliefs and values that we all agree on, and what we plan to do is, when people are approaching us, as they are doing now all the time since we launched last week, is saying, well, do I apply to PAL? Do I become a member of PAL? Well, no, you approach one of the parties that have agreed to this memorandum of understanding. And it will be through those parties that people will get that support, and each of the manifestos for each of those parties will be what that person signs up to. But there is commonality, there is through that memorandum of understanding, and there is that shared belief in social, economic and climate justice, and that eco-socialism that Left Unity that really spearheads. But those common shared beliefs. And yes, we do need electoral and constitutional reform. That's pretty clear. I don't know if you're following the French primaries at the moment, but that is a prime example of when the left splits, nobody wins socialism. And we've got to learn from what's happening in France. Certainly they're learning the hard way. And it's happened with our elections of general secretaries over the last year or two as well, where the left vote split. So we've got to learn from that. But what we can do when we're not in government, what all of us can do as a movement, and I'm not just talking about left political parties now, as a democratic socialist movement, we can push the agenda. There is power, and we are the People's Alliance of the left. And just like for the right, UKIP push the agenda on Brexit, for the left, we can push that agenda. And I hope it's not too far off, we can even get an MP elected, even one person can make that difference. We're already seeing we're getting a mayor to join Breakthrough. We've got councillors joining NIP and Breakthrough. It's a starting point. And think about the SNP. And Philip and I have talked about this a lot. People mocked the SNP in the 60s. They mocked them as a party. And Scotland could be independent within 2 years. And you have to start somewhere. And this is our starting point. And I feel very optimistic, and having come through the doldrums of feeling that I was in the political wilderness, it's these political leaders, in particular Philip and Alex, that inspire me and give me hope for the future and for my children and grandchildren.
You know, Thelma, the funny thing about the SNP is when people say, you know, of course they were mocked in the 60s, right? But I swear now, if you go up to any northerner just in the streets in any northern town and say, would the North be better off as an independent country? You'll be surprised by the answers you get, actually. You're not going to get that many people thinking that sounds ridiculous. It's something that people actually do know. They know like, it just takes traveling to London to see, you know, and it's not as ridiculous as it is. And as I always say, you know, the SNP took 100 years, and we're going to half that. At least I want to see it in my lifetime. So the objective has to be to half the SNP's time from beginning to mainstream.
Yeah.
Well, not all of us have half a century to wait. And there's an interesting comment in here because you're talking about the, you know, the situation in Scotland. Nicola Curtin's commenting. I think she's based in Scotland. She says, I have to say that England has been so right-wing for so long that the vast majority of the last century that I really expect England to dump the Tories in favour of the Lib Dems. Is England that right-wing? I'm not sure it is. I'm just not sure they know how left-wing they are.
No,
but Steve, you're in corrupted. Steve, you're in Liverpool, aren't you? You know that's not true. I am, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from your neck of the woods originally, sort of much more north than that, up in the northeast. But you know, I mean, I'm convinced that most people in this country are left wing, and they don't know they're left wing because the conversation is so corrupt on the media, etc. Because if you look at the policies that Corbyn went into the 2 elections with, they're vastly popular. But if you said to them, "Oh, they're left wing policies," you know, people probably, you know, some people would have a cow over that because they wouldn't want to think of themselves as left wing because they've been told that, you know, it's hard left nonsense all the time. And you know, so I mean, how does PAL and, you know, whatever other groups want to make a change in this country, how do we change that perception so people understand actually, you know, 99% of the stuff that I like is the left wing stuff, you know?
Well, as Philip said, you said you go and ask any northerner about the North, you'll get a positive answer. If you go and ask anyone in London whether they think the underground should be free, you know, if you ask people whether they think whether transport should be or energy should be nationalised, they'll give you a positive answer. But then if you ask them whether they support socialism, they'll say, "No, that's a terrible thing." Yeah. So I think we need to get back to basic things, but not just in basic policies, but actually localities and communities as well. I mean, it's going to be it may not be 100 years, but it is going to take some time. But we've got a lot on our side. People's basic instincts are to help each other and to, you know, actually collective activity is so common amongst people that it's just that it's not just, but the media is a big obstacle to that. Everything is spun in a way that goes against that. But people's basic instincts are to help each other. I believe that firmly.
That's good.
I'm going to leave this comment from Chris Crowder up on the screen for a little bit. That's just because I'm biased. You know?
Following on from what like Doug's saying, I think there's this interesting problem we have when we imagine that England is right wing, and you speak to someone and they might give you a kind of right wing talking point, and there's this kind of assumption that that word or expression or demand that person has said directly reflects how they imagine the world to be. And obviously the classic example of that is Brexit, right? So somebody supports Brexit, and then you assume that what their vision of what the UK would look like after leaving the European Union exactly aligns with Michael Gove's. Probably not, right? But that demand nonetheless tells you something about an antagonism or a problem within economy and society, and it's just a language that's being used in opposition to the elite. It's foolish to think that those words directly reflect what people within the elite imagine those words mean. It's just to do with who controls the media, how powerful are how powerful is the influence of the media over people's thought and what words they use.
I just want to quickly come in on that as well, because like I think in terms of like there's like this fear obviously of how long this could take, but I think the political landscape is so different to what it has been that the change that we're talking about could be achieved a lot quicker. There's a lot of unhappy people out there, and you know, this isn't just like when we talk about like, is the UK, you know, is this a right-wing country? I don't think it is. I think these are policies the policies we're talking about, these are popular. Like over and over again, the polls say that these are popular policies. People believe in this stuff. They've just, again, like the media, I think has been mentioned in the comments, and a couple of people mentioned here, the media have demonized socialism and socialists for years now. And that has obviously not helped and has sort of brought us back a bit. But that appetite for the policies that we're talking about is there. And when we talk about as well, like, yes, technically, because obviously the Tories got an overwhelming majority, but when you actually look at how many votes they need to get per seat, I think it's something like 33,000 votes per seat with this first past the post system. The Green Party, I think, got 800,000, 900,000 votes, and they got one seat. So, like, you know, like that's obviously in itself is absolutely bonkers. But like, I think when you and then when you think as well about the people who don't vote, like how much, you know, again, I can't pluck the figure out of the air, but like it's something like probably like 35%, give or take, maybe 30, probably like 35% people non-voting. These are again people that are not are looking at the choices that they have and are not particularly happy with them, and they need an alternative. And I think that's as well, from a left perspective as well, we need to work really hard to appeal to usual non-voters and give people something to vote for. And that's got to be, I think that will be our biggest challenge. And I think that's where we'll see a lot of, I think that's where we could see the most progress if we're able to target that. And also harness the millions of socialists and left-wing activists out there who are totally disillusioned with Labour. Like, I think that has to be the way forward for anyone on the left, any political party on the left.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Coming in on that, Alex.
Go on, mate.
I think we've been losing. Labour's been losing the vote share since late 90s, really, since the Blair years. And that's never mentioned. It always mentioned of the 80-seat majority for the Tories and it's Corbyn's fault and all of that. But that vote share has been eroding over years now, and never mentioned as well. Was it 40 odd seats that we lost in Scotland in 2015? You can see that this has been going on for a number of years, and disillusionment. And I think what people are seeing now, what I hope they're seeing, is that what we've got now, especially with Labour the way it is, we've got this red team, blue team, and this two-party equilibrium that Tom Nairn talked about in The Breaker of Britain. And you go for a few years where you've got the Tories and currently we've got the populist policies and neoliberalism. But what we're getting now, if Labour get in, people say, "Oh, you're a vote splitter. You're a Tory. You're attacking Labour. They will lose because of people like you." That's nonsense. Labour have already lost me because they are not now. They're no longer a democratic socialist party, and so people haven't got a choice. So what we're hoping with our alliance, and it's a growing alliance because we're in conversation with other groups. And I do hope over this next year people will see as growing numbers and be more effective. That we will see that people will say, actually, I have got somewhere to go. Mandelson talked, didn't he, about where the working class are going to go if they don't vote Labour. Yeah. They'll always vote Labour. Somebody said to me that was in Parliament, if you leave Labour, Thelma, people will still always go for the Labour brand. I don't think they will now. I think they are looking. If you look at the polls at the moment, Labour look as if they've gone up in the polls, but actually the Liberals, bit by bit, they're going up. The Greens are going up. You can see the vote isn't going to Labour. It's going from the Tories to the other parties. And if we can get some good candidates in the local and national elections, people will have somewhere else to go. And if we act with integrity, and if we collaborate, and if we hold on to those socialist principles, which are so important, if we are going to improve our society, end inequality, people are struggling at the moment. And I'm not just talking about people who are on universal credit. I'm talking about people struggling in all sorts of ways. Disabled people who are not getting the support that they should be getting. Education isn't getting the funding and support. National Health Service is being attacked as we speak. And, you know, all of these things people are seeing, and they're saying, who is going to help us? Who is there for us? Well, our alliance will be there for everybody. And our goal is to end this inequality and corruption that is going on in Parliament, and that Westminster control. So a lot to do, but I believe people are waking up to this two-party system and saying, this isn't working. Even if Labour win, taking our VAT off our heating bills is not going to sort my problems out.
Can I quickly just say the idea of like going for people who don't vote and feel disengaged? One of the problems with ignoring that large group of disengaged people is that if we're being charitable to the centrists in the Labour Party who say we have to win the Tory vote, if they're being serious about that, the reason they say that is because they're not interested in engaging with or mobilising those non-voters. So the result of that is then shifting policy to the right. And I'm sure everyone here is on Twitter, so they see how the centrists love that People's Front of Judea joke, right? But if you think from Monty Python, the Judean People's Front of Judea, and they always use it against the left. But if you think about what that joke's actually about, is like two political organizations having minor differences between them and falling out. To me, that kind of sounds like the Labour and Tories, not us three. We have broad similarities, but big focus differences. We offer real choice. So that joke doesn't actually work. You know, the Tories are the People's Front of Judea now, not us.
Yes. Quick housekeeping question. Somebody, Amnon BC, has asked why Tusk isn't represented here, because they are part of the alliance, as I understand it. So, I mean, they were invited on. They couldn't find anybody to come, or what was the?
Yeah, I did actually contact somebody from Tusk and ask if they had somebody that could come on tonight, but nobody was available. Yeah, we've just heard today that Dave Nellis is standing in Birmingham. So, you know, that is good. And they have agreed to the memorandum of understanding and working with our alliance. So that is another group. And, you know, in the future, what we hope to achieve is that there will be discussions about which candidates from which party stand where. And if there can be an agreement reached, I mean, it's not always going to be straightforward, but if an agreement can be reached, then the resources in terms of people, any funding we can give, campaigning, there will be mutual support, and you know, we will step up and support candidates wherever they stand across the country. So it's that unity is strength, isn't it?
Well, will other party members be going up to support Dave Nellis' campaign as a result of this announcement?
Yeah, well, as it's only just, I mean, this is something that was sorted out before our alliance was agreed last week. Obviously, that's been planned by Tusk before we came together as an alliance. But yeah, socialists, if wherever I see a good socialist stand anywhere in the country, on a personal level, I'll be there, and I know that many people will be.
Might be needed down in Islington North in due course there, Thelma, by the time.
Oh, I think we'll have busloads there, don't you?
Comment in here from Simon Gunn, who says the non-voting figure will be higher at the next general election due to voter ID. So the government's just passed legislation to force people to have photo ID if they want to vote, which is a naked attempt to pull people out of the democratic system. One case of voter fraud, I think there was in 2019, and because of that, they changed the law to make it harder for millions, which is unconscionable. But it has, I think, beyond question, moved the bar higher for anybody that wants to actually disrupt what's going on, which no doubt is the point. Can this country have a Podemos moment? Can we've seen left governments in Portugal, or left-led at least, and in Spain. I mean, is there room for something to actually happen? Is there the appetite, and does the political system allow for such a thing to happen short of an earthquake? Because that's always the argument, isn't it? That in the first past the post system, you can't have all these other parties making any kind of headway, really. So who wants to field that one first?
Am I right to come in quickly on that? So I think that's why I think that the People's Alliance to the Left is so important. Like, obviously, in a first past the post system, we've got to be clever, we've got to be tactical at this stage. Breakthrough supports break PR, and I believe that Northern Independence Party and Left Unity do as well. I'm hoping I got that right. But we obviously want to see that change to the voting system. But in these earlier times, we obviously need to work together really closely and figure out who wants to stand where, and target key seats at this stage. Like, I know for a fact, from a Breakthrough perspective, we couldn't stand in 650 seats tomorrow, and I don't think we'd want to either. I think that's where a lot of parties go wrong, especially when we talk about the likes of I mentioned the Green Party before, and Brexit Party, now Reform, is they'll want to stand in every seat in the country, but then a lot of these will be paper candidates, or they won't put loads of time and resources into these campaigns. But I think as a united left, I think what we need to look at is, obviously, as Thelma mentioned before, is all of us working together, identifying key seats that we all want to stand in, working together and figuring out who would be best placed to stand there, and pooling all our efforts into these seats and getting, and as Thelma said before, that one MP could make all the difference, and that could be the start of it. I'm an optimistic person, a hopeful person, and I think that with the energy that there is on the left right now, I think there's a real opportunity for us to really make an impact. And that isn't coming from an idealistic point of view either. I think there's clear demand for it, and we just got to, what we need to do as a group is just take that energy and really push it forward, because I think there's just so much potential with it.
And we have to do it, because there is that possibility of a Podemos moment, but there's also the possibility of a Trump moment or a Front National moment. If the left don't speak up and do what we're doing, then the field is left to, and we see already that the far right are trying to utilise the anti-vaxxers and so on to gain. If there's that vacuum, politics abhors a vacuum. If the left isn't there, then the right will have an open door to walk into. We have a duty to do this, apart from anything else.
We can't wait, can we? That's the fundamental issue here. Right? There's a lot of people that are obviously still in that position of mourning, I guess, of what could have been in 2019, and I do understand that. I was only a Labour Party member for a couple of years, so I'm not in the same position as a lot of people that have put decades into the Labour Party and are feeling very betrayed and very hurt by the Labour Party. I am, but maybe not. That hasn't hit me as hard as others due to my, how long I was in the party for. But I think we just can't wait anymore. When we look at the state of this country and also the state of the planet as well, we can't wait. We have to do this now, because I'd hate to leave this planet and our society in the way it is currently for my children and my grandchildren as well. It would just break my heart to see, this country and this planet just deteriorate even more rapidly than it currently is. So we have got, as Doug says, we've got a duty on the left to really pull our socks up and just get cracking with it, because we just don't, we can't wait for someone to come along and make it better. We've got to be the change we want to see, and that has to start now.
Yeah.
Well,
But I'm just coming in on that. All credit to you, Alex, and to Philip and to Doug, because I know Left Unity was formed some years ago. But all of you haven't just sat back and said, well, this needs to change, this is wrong. You've been proactive, and you have established your new political parties. But just going back to something we were talking about before, and people, using their democratic right not to vote. That's the area I think as socialists we need to work on. We need to work on those people who feel that they have no voice and their vote doesn't matter. Because the Tories got in on, I think it was under 30% of the vote. And, there are so many thousands of people who are choosing not to vote. And if there's a good, dedicated socialist standing in different areas, and people think, actually, that person speaks to me and to the issues and the challenges I'm dealing with. And this word trust is really important to me, always has been, when I was a teacher and when I was an MP. Who can you trust? And at the moment, the country, it's a dire situation where politicians generally are not trusted. So what we're trying to do with the Alliance is to have a movement that people say, actually, those people speak for me. They are going to deliver the policies that are going to improve my life, and the things that I can no longer take for granted, like affordable housing, to be able to heat my home, to be able to educate my children, to keep healthy, all of those basic needs that are not being met for a lot of people within this society after 11 years of austerity, now post-COVID. And I think the COVID, this last 2 years, the COVID situation has exposed the inequality in our society, and it's changed people's mindset. And I think that's something else that actually, out of adversity, people are looking, we're being governed by fools and liars, and that there has to be another way. So it's getting that vote out from people who are thinking, nobody speaks for me. That's the goal, got to be.
But it's not just their vote, it has to be their engagement as well. It is them who are going to make this. There are very few of us here, even when we gather, relatively, when we gather all our forces, but there are so many more people out there, and lots of them are doing stuff. I mean, again, the pandemic showed with all the sort of mutual aid groups that sprung up, there are lots of people still out there doing lots of stuff, and they don't see it necessarily as politics. They say, they say about the Labour Party, the only time we see you is when there's an election. Well, I don't want anyone to say that about us. I want to be seen there all the time, and we have to be grounded in those communities and get involved. And those communities drawn in, because when Thelma said the way people can join PAL is that they can join one of the parties, actually the other thing they can do is get their organisation to agree the memorandum of understanding and come into PAL as well. We are a pluralist umbrella movement. We have, no one of us can draw these people in. Have a look at have a look at the basic agreements, and if you agree it, and your union or your organisations, there are some political organisations that only exist in a particular city. Well, you're welcome. Join us.
There's a few people been asking.
Sorry,
what about?
Sorry, Steve. I was just going to mention the Peace and Justice Project that when Doug mentioned the grassroots campaigning, and there's an awful lot of good stuff going on with that as well.
Yes. The question I was going to put, there's been a few people asking through the comments, what about Scotland? Are you organising in Scotland? Is there anybody joining in from up there, etc.? So, I mean, is Scotland and Wales on the agenda?
Northumbria traditionally stretched up to Edinburgh, but we have no wish to contest those borders.
We haven't tended to organise in Scotland particularly. We do have some members who are involved in things like the Radical Independence campaign and things there. We do have members in Wales, but they have a certain amount of autonomy, and if you follow them, they're putting out appeals at the moment for unity in Wales, because there are different issues in those areas, as well as the sort of elections we have. They have their Senate, and in Scotland there's the Scottish Assembly. Unfortunately, those things have a greater degree of proportionality in the vote as well. So there are more openings there. And politically, there are more openings as well. I mean, in Wales, the Welsh Labour Party has formed an agreement with Clyde over a certain minimum number of parts. Now, that is far to the left of the current Labour Party programme, even though it's not anything near what we might be asking for. So these spaces open up in different ways in the different countries, and we have to be pluralistic about it. But yes, I'm sure we can. If there are organisations in Scotland that want to discuss with us, we would be open to that.
There's plenty of people within the Northern Independence Party who would go up, of course, to Scotland to campaign for Scottish independence. And we also have, some of the very first meetings, it wouldn't surprise anyone that some of the first meetings I had was with the radical Leave people within Scotland. And we in the Northern Independence Party have a quite good relationship with our comrades in Wales, in Ireland, and in Scotland. Basically, anyone within the sort of anti-unionist left tradition, we have quite strong support, and I've had lots of meetings with.
Yeah, all members of the alliance uphold the right for self-determination, and that was something we agreed very early on. And certainly when it comes to Scottish independence, I'll be up there supporting any campaign.
Got to say, I think it's been absolutely delightful to watch four people converse and react and bounce off each other as well as we have. And you wouldn't think we actually have three distinct political parties represented here. It's quite remarkable. It does give me a warm feeling that actually this alliance might be something that actually is something to get quite excited about and worth paying attention to. And I think it's fair to say the reaction you've had so far since your announcement has been an overwhelmingly positive one towards PAL as this alliance. Has that been reflected within your distinct parties as well?
So I mean, we after PAL was announced, we've had quite a significant membership surge, and I'm very happy about that. And our members are very happy, and we've got many people joining. And from the perspective of the Northern Independence Party, I think it's just given people the extra nudge to say that we are a serious force. We are having conversations with other people that we agree with on the broad socialist values. And yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic how many members we have, and it really does give us this. We're really looking forward to having some ground campaigns, because we in certain areas, no surprises, Liverpool, etc. We've got such membership density that we're going to be able to put up a real strong campaign.
Yeah. I was going to quickly come on from a Breakthrough perspective, but we've seen January's been our best month since we were formed in terms of membership numbers, in terms of coming in. And again, it's been a really positive development as well. Sorry, I didn't actually mention when we were talking about Wales and Scotland before. We have members in Wales and Scotland keen to campaign up there. And obviously today, off the news that we had Owen, who's the mayor of Bangor, join us today as well. So it's definitely something that Wales and Scotland definitely aren't off limits for Breakthrough. But yeah, no, PAL's definitely been a really positive thing for the party, and the membership have been overwhelmingly positive about it, which has been really amazing to see as well. Overwhelmingly positive. And yeah, it's just, again, from my perspective as well, from my own personal perspective, it's been something that I've wanted to happen since day one, and to see it all come together and see the response we've been getting. It's been really, really lovely to see. And I think there was a lot of people at the beginning who were sort of saying, it's not possible to bring the left together. But these are the first sort of stepping stones to showing that this is actually possible. And I think, as Phil said before, there is people now showing much more of an interest in all our respective parties, because, there's not this sort of sense of you know, if I support Northern Independence Party, like, does that mean I can't support Breakthrough or Left Unity or whatever? And there's like this sort of sense of like, oh, you're all working together now. So I don't feel that sense of guilt of like supporting one or not the other or whatever else, because we're all in the same boat. We're all just trying to secure that socialist government. That's the ultimate goal of this. So it is just a really positive response, really overwhelming, and just really amazing, to be honest.
It's we're into the last 10 minutes of the program. So Demo, was that you coming in? I'll let you do that, and then there are people asking, as Amethyst has here, how can organisations affiliate to PAL, or I guess how can individuals support it if they want to? So we'll park that for 1 second while you do your bit, Demo, and then we'll come back to that if that's all right.
I think it was Doug that was coming in, actually, mate.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry, I was looking at the comment rather than the screen.
Was it me coming in there? Sorry, did you say?
Doug.
Doug?
You wanted to say
Sounded
something,
like
Doug?
someone was going to come in.
I was just going to say that we're also picking up new members, but also the conversation is so much broader in terms of the massive explosion in social media following and the cross-posting of stuff that's churning over. The conversation has got so much wider over the last week since Thelma tweeted her announcement. And yes, we are picking up members, but also just the audience is well beyond the membership as well.
Super. So yeah, if an organisation out there wants to become part of PAL, how do they do it? And if individuals out there want to support,
well, what's been happening as our meetings have grown with different campaign groups joining us is they've approached me, either direct messaged me on Twitter or approached one of the political parties, and it's usually leaders of that group or somebody on the exec. So we can keep the numbers down, because I say PAL is not a political party. We're at this umbrella organisation, as it were, but if they approach us directly, and then they would be a member of their exec or whatever, would be invited to attend our discussions, which are on the Zoom currently, and as I say, the numbers are growing of the different groups that are joining us, and they're really positive meetings on the whole. I mean, I'm not pretending there aren't issues that have to be discussed, etc., and there's some challenges, but on the whole, the ethos and the culture of our alliance is a really positive one, and I think we should be proud of that, and long may that continue. So yeah, we'd welcome other groups to come and join us and join the discussions, and then the separate group will be the one that the working group is the one that discusses who stands where. And how we support each other. I think the next immediate step for PAL is to get a social media account going that is actually PAL, because at the moment it's run from my Twitter account and the accounts from the separate political parties, which is great because again it's that numbers that we're all mutually supporting each other and retweeting things, etc. But I think it's one of our objectives to get a Twitter account going for PAL so people can approach us directly if they want to join us, and fingers crossed, as the numbers are going up already in the first week, and we can get some people standing and winning council seats and ultimately parliamentary seats. So everything to work for and to fight for, and it's just a joy to work with these people.
Any further comment on that from anyone? Otherwise, the question, I guess, then we'll round out with is what's next? What's the next step for PAL? In practical terms, what's your next step along the road to get into that destination that you were talking about there, Tom?
Well, I think that we need to meet. We meet every month, and sometimes in between, and we're in contact with each other all the time. I think we've all discussed the importance of grassroots campaigning and that engagement with communities. So I think that each of the political parties will be doing that. I've mentioned engagement with people who are disaffected with politics and feel that they won't be voting. I think that's important to make people realise that our alliance is about standing up for working people and supporting working people and pushing as far as we can, putting pressure on not just the Tories but the Labour Party as well to actually deliver on, well, socialist policies, which certainly Labour should be delivering, and they're not at the moment. There's not an effective opposition. So I think our goal is to push and put as much pressure on as possible through our social media, but also that grassroots campaigning and, you know, coordinating strike action and collective action across the country as well, in terms of secure pensions and jobs. And I think there's an awful lot to do with that as well, and supporting collective action. So yeah, there is a lot to do, and we're just at the early stages. But I think we've got the will and determination to do it, and the more that join us, the better.
And I will ask. I mean, you know, I'm not asking you to give any names here because you know, no doubt it's not the right time yet, if there are. But are there other groups and organisations looking at joining already? What's the state? Is this a, you know, is this a kind of core group launch and then it's going to expand, or what's
well, we hope. There's a lot of groups out there. I mean, obviously, there's got to be a fundamental agreement on the memorandum of understanding, and what we stand for and our values and principles. And there are obviously red lines with certain things, which we have discussed. I mean, one, for instance, is the belief in self-determination, which we have agreed as an alliance. So there will be things that would prevent them becoming a part of the alliance, but we are open to talks and negotiations with other groups, and campaign groups and unions as well. Yeah, it's an exciting prospect, I think, and there's a lot of interest from other groups. Let's just leave it at that.
Excellent. Unless anybody has anything desperately pressing, I think we'll wind it up at that point. And I'll just say thank you to everyone who's watched. Thank you to our panel. If you're watching this on catch up as well, thank you. And do please share this. And if you're not subscribed to Socialist Telly on one of its channels on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, then please make sure that you subscribe on those, and where applicable, click on the notification icon so you get to know about the new programs coming up. I think we will have a few more interesting programs coming up in the next week, certainly, on the union front, on the Labour National Executive front, etc. as well. And thank you for your support. Thank you for those who participate in the comments particularly, and hopefully we've been able to field enough to make you feel part of everything. Really appreciate your time, everybody. Best of luck with the new endeavour, and we'll see you all again on Socialist Telly soon, no doubt. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night, everyone.
Solidarity.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.